Okay, so name and age.
Les Allen, age 73.
So Les, tell me how you got into logging.
How'd I get into logging? Well, like any young man, my father and my uncle and my whole family was in logging of some types, but mostly the father at an early age is kind of where we got started. Obviously, we would. When I say we, I'm talking my brothers. I have two other brothers and a sister, but we would go out in the yard there and play around on the log trucks and monkey with stuff and do all the things that boys do. And then once we get a chance to actually ride out into the woods there with pops, we would couldn't keep us off of any type of machine. We had to go out there and play on them. So, but that's at a young age. I mean, I don't think we were 13, 14 when we were doing all that.
Wow.
But yeah, so it kind of grew on us.
What did your dad do? Is he a cable logger, or did he do ground base like with a dozer? Or?
That was back in the 50s and partially into the 60s. So yeah, he had a tower at one time, but he was more a ground base skidder type logger, cat logger at that time. Skidders hadn't even come out yet hardly, and so he was cat logger and yeah, that type of thing.
Yeah, did he
But
work for like private individuals around here? Or?
he was good at finding small parcels, and sometimes once in a while you get lucky and get a big parcel. But he would dicker with him, and so he'd always go on a percentage with him, and he did quite well on that for most part. He ended up loved trucks, always loved trucks, so he ended up hauling logs for Crown Zellerback out of Chimacum.
Okay.
Yeah, down there for years he did that. Yeah.
So tell me about your cable experience with your dad.
Yeah, he was always coming up with these sales. I had a little bit here and there, but mostly when I graduated in '66, he was doing a job up above Glen, up there on the hill. There was 3 million feet or something like that. But most of it was cable logging and stuff, and he had a heel boom.
Oh yeah.
Geez, I can't even think what type of heel boom it was. It was a Lorraine, and so he didn't have the money to buy a regular yarder, so he bought just a sled, had the drums on it, and then we rigged a tree. Always went that right. And then we had a guy out there on the whistle punk out there on the stump, that type of thing. So pretty much I was the only one out in rigging most of the time, so I had to learn pretty quick on that. And then a lot of times nobody was running the loader, so I had to teach myself how to run a line machine.
Wow.
And learned a lot doing that. Yeah, learned a lot doing that. But that was before hydraulics.
So how long did you work on the cable side?
Oh, could be probably a couple years or so, something like that.
And then you jumped straight from that over to working with your Uncle Ray Allen then?
Yeah, and then eventually he got to Washington Skylock. So my experience working with that on the cable side of things is helped out there.
Do you remember when he gave up logging?
He gave up logging kind of when his health said so, because he had cancer at one time and then emphysema and that sort of stuff. So I would say probably in the early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you or any of your family, did you take over the business or?
No.
Okay.
No, we never took it over. Not from him.
Mm-hmm.
But so we worked for Ray Allen, which is my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Ray was a really good logger, and at that time, everybody was still logging old growth. big timber. Even out west, everywhere they were still handling big wood. And Ray was smart enough. We started with skidders, the old Garrett skidders. You know, I remember running a Garrett 15, and then I worked up to Garrett 21, and then finally we got a 22B, and I thought that was the biggest, fastest, hard to pull in machine that there ever was, you know, at the time. But that was what I'm trying to say. There was a transition period there, and Ray always got into small wood. He had small wood, so we had to learn how to handle small wood efficiently, and so we learned from that. And there again, at that time, the hydraulics weren't available yet. They hadn't come into play yet. We had machines like Bantams, and of course, when we finally ended up with the Prentice 600, that was a huge machine. You know, that was a beautiful machine. So from there, then Ray quickly learned that every time we'd get a unit going, the Fallers was always behind. They couldn't keep up with us. He ran 3 skidders, I believe, at the time. I remember Charlie Hartman, he ran one, and my brother ran one, and I ran one, and anyway, he had all kinds of guys running stuff, but back then you were hand falling, so in the morning you always have your wind. Every morning, you know, that time of the year, the wind comes up, so the Fallers, they would always go home at 9 o'clock because they got blown out. And it just used to infuriate Ray. And I don't blame him. Now I look back at it, because you just get going and the cutter's good. So there's got to be a better way. Got to be a better way. So some of the guys back south were working with these things they called the feller bunching. And there wasn't any one type, but there was a draught. Draught was the only one way back then that actually had a tilting mechanism on it. And so Ray bought one. And at that time, the only way you could cut it was a shear head. Okay? So anyway, Ray bought that, and Ron something, I apologize, but I can't remember his name. He ran that thing for quite a few years for Ray. And that started the feller bunching as we know it today. And what happened then was, okay, now we got the trees down, and we got them all bunched up, and we got machines that could pull in these big piles of wood and drop on the land. Well, we still had no way to process it, other than people on the landing. And that's what they did, and that was tough. There was years, you know, there was 3 guys on the landing all the time, cutting logs and staying out of the way of skidders and all that thing. So we had we learned ways to do that, how to come into the landing, have a log across the landing, so when you dropped the turn, it was up off the ground, and your saws weren't in. There's a lot of tricks we used and learned. But that was kind of the start of the small, how to handle small wood. Okay, so then I'm still working with Ray at this time, so I learned a lot from Ray, and he learned a lot from me too, because we shared the same ideas. And so then the problem was, how we need something to process, but somehow we got to process. Well, Ray kind of fell on hard times there. He had an opportunity. He was logging for Crown Zilla back up here around Discovery Bay at the time, and he logged a lot for him, but they kind of come up short, and so I still remember to the day that these guys come walking up the road, and they were Pulpit Talbot people, and they wanted Ray to go to work for him. And you know, I didn't know the inner workings with Ray, but he did not. He shut him down. He says, "No, I'm not gonna. I got work here," and but that didn't last long. So
Hmm.
we ended out west doing a job out there for a year or so, and it was kind of a tough show after that. That time he'd bought a yarder. At that time he bought a yarder, swing yarder, and a Washington little 78, and I'm probably
Mm-hmm.
and so, but I had a lot of good people like Kenny Richardson, who I just talked about, and Pat Yar worked with us up there. Yeah, Pat, he was good man, good man.
Wow. What did Pat do with you up there?
He was falling a lot.
Okay.
Did a lot of falling, but you know, Pat, he'd do whatever he wanted him to do. So, yeah, I remember having to pack that guy out because what did he do? He broke his leg or did something.
Oh no.
Yeah, that guy's big. He's pretty heavy to be packing out of the woods.
Wow. Yeah, he's a bull of a man when I
Yeah.
saw him years and years ago.
So I was giving him a bad time the whole time, packing him out. And, yeah. And he never forgot that up there. He never did.
Yeah.
Pat and I's birthdays were on the same day.
No kidding.
Yeah, so every October 28th, he'd call me and clear up to when he passed away.
Mhm.
Yeah, we kept in touch that way. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty cool. But yeah, for the most part, I did a lot of that. And then I actually ended up getting involved with the Buckman family, and of course Buck Mountain, as everybody knows, was the top of the list there for many years, you know. And Ray was a really good logger, but there was oh gosh, not too long, maybe 5-6 months. I went out and worked on his big yarder with him out at Nia Bay out there.
Wow.
Doing that work. Me and Mike McCohen, we was out there setting chokers and, you know, logging the big stuff. So
Wow. Do you remember what was that, a steel spar yarder, or was it a
yeah, it was the steel. Yeah. Oh, I should remember the make of it too, but yeah.
Are they using Washingtons or
No, it wasn't a Washington. It was a Skagit.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, it was a Skagit. Yeah. Thing would pull. Boy, that thing would pull hard. Oof. Yeah, you just got out of the way when that thing.
Wow, too much. Now? Did you work with Mike McCone quite a bit outside of that time with Buck Mountain? Or?
Not really. No. Only thing I worked with Mike McCone was on his cars. He was hard on cars. He'd come down and I'd have to repair them for him. But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we didn't have too much there. Yeah.
Was he a choker setter for them? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so was I. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good experience. So that's your ground. That's your ground base. That's how you learn things. You know, anybody can get a grab a hold of something, pull it in, but when you got to do it by hand and figure out how to get that up and over and around stumps and to the landing, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, isn't that the truth of it?
Oh yeah, a lot of good people did that for many years, and they still do.
Now, did you go straight from that time with working for Ray Buckman? Was that after you worked with Ray Allen?
So
Kind of in between.
yeah, let me think how that flowed. Yeah, so Craig and I, I went out. Ray was having problems, so I went out and worked with Ray Buckman for a span there, and then Craig and I decided to try to make a go of it ourselves, and so we got together with Ray and took over payments on his 600B Prentice, and I had bought an old can car skidder, big thing.
Wow.
It was a big thing. Yeah, big skidder. Yeah, I was scared to death. The payments were like $700 a month, and I didn't know if I could make those or not. But
Yeah.
anyway, so Craig and I started doing that and just finding spare work here and there, and then was able to get our hands on that drop 40 feller buncher that Ray had, and we were out at the end of Coyle doing a private sale, and Craig would go out in fall, and he'd come in, and I would skid him, and then we'd do that for a couple of days, and then we put a grapple on that. Took the head off, put a grapple on it, and we loaded logs, loaded the truck with that. And then one day, this green truck come into the landing there, and he was sitting there watching us, and I was going, who's that? And so finally he got out of his truck, and he come over and introduced himself to us. And he says, "Hi, I'm Milt Philbrook from Pope and Talbot." I didn't have a clue who that was, but history took care of it from then on, because he says, I've been watching you boys, and he says, I think I could find some work for you if you're interested. So anyway, we cleaned up that job to the best of my memory, and started working for Pope and Talbot.
Wow.
Yeah. And 15 years later, we were still working for Pope and Talbot. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, and at that time, everything was starting to take place. We were still hunting for some sort of way to process these logs, and there was a darn gun outfit back in Minnesota. They were building this thing they called a processor. I called it the grain machine, and it had a carriage on it, go back and forth. You put that log in there with this boom above it and set it in there and go back and forth and trim the logs off and shoot it off and measure it, and away we go. So anyway, Herman Brothers bought the first one, and Bill and Fred, and for whatever reason, Fred was he didn't like it, and we were thinking, that's the only game in town right now. So let's just get one of those. So we did. We it was a big step for us. It was a lot of money back then. So we'd ordered one, and that pretty much changed the whole game from then on till now. It changed the whole game. And at that time we were using what makes this mountain logger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We ended up at 2 or 3 mountain loggers. Finally came to the conclusion how to put grapples on. So Young and Mountain Logger was building them, but Young was the leader at that time for grapples on machines. So anyway, we run mountain loggers and stuff, and even had 2 FMCs at one time, and Young put a grapple on one of them for us. First time they ever tried that. And, it worked quite well, but obviously everybody knows you couldn't keep undercarriage under the darn thing. So at that time, Fred Herman was using D7s and D7Gs with a grapple on it, and so we ended up buying one too, because that seemed like the most logical thing to do. So yeah, there was a lot of transition there, and then we got involved with Caterpillar. So we wanted to fill it, and still, Cat prior to that had still not come out with a hydraulic machine. Ray Allen actually bought one of the first hydraulic machines, bigger ones as we know it today. It was called the Northwest.
Wow.
Built right over in Seattle. Now it was a big machine, but it had all hydraulics on it. It was actually, for years and years, Northwest built the line machines. Mm-hmm. Well, they built a hydraulic machine, and I learned to run that too. And from then off, everybody else was in the game, Mm-hmm. And of course, Cat is always a little bit behind, but when they get it figured out, it's usually usually a good machine for sure. Yeah, but we were still using Prentice up to that time.
Wow. So how long do you think you used that Han for, up until you moved up to maybe a stroker or a dangle head processor?
Yeah, we just to back up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
the timber industry started changing. Of course, we all know the spotted owl issue,
Mm-hmm.
and that affected the peninsula over here and the west end pretty heavily. And there was too many loggers and not enough wood, because the Forest Service had to curtail all that stuff, and so we had made a decision. At that time, we lived up in Sequim, and at that time we decided to move over to Arlington.
Mm-hmm.
Rainier called us. They'd bought a 4,000 acre tract over there by Granite Falls, and they wanted us to come over there and log that or get started on it. So that was a major decision we had to do, and Pope was kind of in a on a not a downslope, but they were just they logged so much that they had a drought within for the next 10 years, so it slowed way down. They kept Herman Brothers and some of those other guys going for a while there, yeah. But we decided to move over there, so that's what we did, and we still took the Han Harvester over there, and and the 600, and then we still we took the D7 over there.
Mm-hmm.
But so now Caterpillar is starting to get involved, and they wanted us to test one of their 227s,
Mm-hmm.
which was a solid based buncher, and it had a head on it, but what everybody was finding out, all the heads that they had on were the shear heads.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happened there was, like Weyerhaeuser, when you do alder and you use a shear head, they run them through their mills, and then they run them into the dry kiln. That wood was just splitting 5-10 feet up into the log, just ruining that log and the lumber. So they come out to our job and did test, and they put that dye into the tree, and they just wait and watch what it did, and it did. It went right up in there.
Wow.
So Cat was thinking. They said, okay, let's not make the shears straight. Let's concave the shears so that they're like this. So it puts the pressure down into the stump and not into the tree. So bingo, away we went. Weyerhaeuser accepted those trees, and that was the start of that whole situation.
Wow.
But that still wasn't good enough. So, gosh, I'm trying to think who the name of the outfit was. We bought the first doggone. Oh, it was Rotasaw. Rotasaw up out of Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Was building a circular saw head, and they were a lot of money, and that was a big step. So we bought one. Craig and I, and my brother Larry worked with us a lot too. He was always around. He went into service for a while, but then he come back out, and he was right there, always running a machine or doing whatever. And so anyway, we bought one of those rotosaws, and it was pretty cool head at the time. The downside of that was it forced everybody else to get away from the shears, and that was spendy for a lot of people. Because I'll never forget that. Yeah, that was a lot of money to buy one of those rotosaws,
Mm-hmm.
but you had to move forward. You
Yeah.
know, if you stayed the same, then you were going to be out of work. So anyway, that's what we bought, and put it on the 227, and it was a good combination for quite a while. Yeah. But when we moved to Granite Falls, then things were changing too. Things were changing. Kat invited me and Fred Herman down to Peoria one week. They gave us a call and wanted us to come down there. And we didn't know what they wanted. Anyway, we flew down there and stayed over that night. And then the next day we went out to their facility there, which was huge, you know, just overwhelming. But anyway, and they got us into this room, and we was looking on the walls. It was a big room with 4 walls around it, and they had pictures on all 4 sides. Well, they had a FMC up there, and then they had a regular cat, and then they had this new thing that they wanted to build, and they had that picture of that FMC, and this thing they wanted to build was impregnated into it to kind of duplicate what they were trying to do. And so at that time we figured, okay, they were wanting to build a high track cat, and they wanted Fred's and I's opinion, and so they questioned us for probably 2 or 3 hours. And then the following day we went out to the proving grounds, and mind you, in that room there was probably 20 cat people just sitting there taking all this information and asking us tons of questions and stuff. So that, like I said, the next day we went out to the proving grounds, and their proving grounds is huge. And the buildings are all they're open, but they're covered. And so that's where they do all their testing. And so we walked up to this machine, and it was a D4, but they put high sprockets on it, and it had a grapple of some sorts off the back. And they wanted us to take that out of the building and go out back and down into the ravines and just feel it out and test it. So I said, Fred, you go first. So he gladly jumped on that thing and went out there. Of course, the D4 is a pretty light machine, and you know, once you come from a D7 and get into something like that, you're going like, wow, this thing's pretty rough, you know. But we could see the potential, you know. At that time, they didn't use the rollers that moved at that time. It was just a standard straight rail.
Wow.
So
okay.
it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
So anyway, we gave them our opinions on everything, and they took heed, and I think it was like, I want to say three months later, I was working in Kitsap County, and in comes this lowboy, and this thing was all covered completely. They had it all wrapped. Well, they brought that machine, not that specific machine, another one. They brought it up from Peoria, and we tested that. My brother Craig drove it. We tested that for probably for 3 weeks, I think. But they wanted to know. What they did though is went ahead and put the floating rollers underneath on it. And another thing they did, not too many people know, the first it was a hydrostatic drive.
Really?
Yeah. Craig would come into the landing and he would just do a 360, you know, just like a lawnmower. You could
Wow.
just spin that thing right around, and so quick, you know. And so we thought, wow, this is going to be pretty cool if they go. But Cat decided not to. They said it was just too expensive, too darn expensive at that time to do that. So they put a standard. Eventually, they ended up putting a standard transmission in, and so out comes the D5. They took that back, and then they, of course, they're always way ahead of whatever we're doing. They always had already figured they were going to go to the bigger machine. So they brought out a D5 and wanted us to test that. So we tested that over in Granite Falls, probably, yeah, for well, ended up 2 years we tested our thing. They brought out their truck that has all these things that can you put things on the frame and stuff, but to test it. They could test the loads on it, but they could sit in that truck and actually do all that while it's out there yarding. You know, it was a pretty cool deal. But they had issues. They started putting them out, putting the 5 out, and they've come to find out oil was coming out of the track frames. More so, not it's coming right out of the blade where the blade was hooked. Oil was coming out there, and so what they come to find out was that they took ours back to Seattle, Tukwila, and disassembled it. And come to find out that whole frame of the transmission, where that whole thing was sitting, was just fractured, just like a cobweb.
Wow!
It had cracks all over it. Just like they thought, because here they took our cat and they tore it completely down to nothing, and they'd already sent up a new frame. They knew what was going on, so they made a new one down in Peoria, and they put that all back together, and then we went ahead and tested it for another year or so, and we finally ended up getting that cat for doing all that testing for him for years, you know. But
wow.
Yeah, so when people talk to me about D5s, I know all about them.
Wow. So how long did you run D5s for?
We run those for, man, you're putting a date on me. It's hard. Not probably a couple of years longer, and that was it. Then it was actually Fred Herman had the great idea. Took his 235 out, started swinging logs out in the woods. I was going, that guy's got a good idea. So we bought a 235. At the time we already had one, I believe, yeah. But there again, Cat was behind the 8 ball on that, because they were transitioning away from the 235 to their news machines, but they didn't have anything in between, except what they call the EL 300s and the EL series, which is a foreign machine that had built, but those things, frames were cracking and all that stuff. So anyway.
So you guys, so tell me, you went from using those high track dozers to you started swinging wood.
Yeah.
Shovel logging.
Yeah. Then at that time we were starting to work for Campbell Group. They bought another 60, 70 some thousand acres up around that country, Granite Falls and that area too, and they wanted us to work for us, so we went from Rainier right to the Campbell Group, and good people, real good people to work for and stuff. So yeah, that's what we did there, and then they wanted, they had some areas that needed a yarder on. So in '95 we bought a little swing yarder called the Diamond. It was just a 2-drum machine, and of course the haywire and stuff. But anyway, so we learned to we're still having a small wood, so we learned to use our feller buncher. Then at that time was we had a couple of Timcos over a period of time, maybe 3 of those darn things, you know. And they were kind of a little hot rod, but they worked pretty good. But and their tilting mechanism wasn't too bad either. So we were using those, but we were on some slopes at that time, and we learned to feller bunch correctly for those slopes, and we used on chokers, we'd use automatic chokers. Started coming out, so we bought the first bunch of those darn things, and then I could get my my cat machine down in there and swing logs over to the lines, and we did a lot of that. I mean, people do it today all the time, you know, but we did it way back then.
Wow.
and started yeah, that worked very efficiently. Yeah, that little yarder, we could yard a lot of wood with it, and so that's what we did.
And is that the same machine that you have today, that diamond?
Yes, it
Okay.
is. Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. For the most part, it's probably outdated, but it still runs and works very well. But it's obviously today everything's hydraulic, and would love to have one of those.
did you stick with using auto chokers, or are you using something else now for extracting wood with that?
Oh well, we bought a Summit grapple,
Mm-hmm.
80-inch motorized grapple, which works really good. It works really good. There again, it would work better if it was on a hydraulic machine versus ours, but no, we still use that. Plus, we got another carriage, Ackman carriage, that we use when we get in a situation where the grapple can't reach it at all. So we we have both carriages to do that with. So yeah, but the machines improved considerably, and obviously from the I'm kind of going back here a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, but from the green machines, it was funny. I need to talk about that a little bit. The green machine, I call it, the Hahn harvester. Ray Hahn was his name. That he was the guy that designed that thing, and so anyway, there was a really good salesman up here called Fred Darby. He's passed away now, but he was quite a character. Anyway, he took me back to Minnesota where those things were built, right there on Lake Michigan. I remember it was really cold, but they wanted me to look at that thing and make changes, and so because I complained about some things that could have been changed, so we went back there, and it was a big shop, but it wasn't that big, but those guys just had a piece of paper, and one guy had some scissors, and so I said, first off, we're going to change the grapple design and the heel and rack design and stuff. Well, what do you want? I said, well, okay, this is where we need to be. So they made that change, and we made a whole bunch of changes on that. To be exact, we made 29 changes. So when we were all done that night, and I says, but there's one thing. I said, I want to buy a new one. I'll buy the first one that comes out with all these changes on it. No problem. But I says, we got to paint a different color. And he looked at me and he says, Les, he says, we'll paint that thing any color you want. I says, okay, it's got to be yellow.
Oh, wow.
So he painted it yellow with some black on it or something anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the thing at the time, was that before, and that was the last one we bought, because at that time I could see the danglers were coming on, and there was way too much more flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
I remember so many times trying to put that Hahn harvester down off the road or wherever we could, and pulling it and lifting it, and then the danglers came out, so we stepped into that arena right away.
And what was your first dangle head you got?
Cato.
Yeah.
We stayed with Cato for many years, right up to a year or so ago here.
Okay.
When we bought the new South Star, but yeah, it was a good head. Yeah, we bought a smaller one to put on our fellow buncher for a while, because Campbell Group thought they wanted to do some bunch of thinning, and so we got involved with that for a while, and then they figured out that hemlock wasn't worth thinning, and that's all they had was hemlock, and you're better off to wax it in 40 years and just not goof around thinning. So
yeah.
So anyway, we got rid of that head. But anyway, we run Cato, the big ones. They weigh 7,000 pounds or something for many years.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Too cool.
Yeah.
Now, was that, so you ran Cato's, and then what was your carrier that you were sticking with? Was it still Cat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was still Cat, the 330.
Okay.
Yeah. Starting to log with the 330 quite a bit, actually. And then when I'd wear out one of those for what I was doing, then we'd flip it over and put it for the processor
Mm-hmm.
and run it out for another few years or so, maybe
Yeah.
longer than that. But yeah, of course, the 330 evolved to where it was getting better and better, and then as we know it today, the 658s and the 558s and all those
Mm-hmm.
are beautiful machines, beautiful machines. So, but yeah, we bought one of the first 658s that came out. We were logging down on the Snoqualmie tree farm, and there again, Cat brought that out, and I'll never forget because got it out there and it had a valve problem, had a doggone valve problem, and they had to put that thing on a lowboy and take it back to Mount Vernon. And
Oh no.
yeah, they had it for 2 weeks, and what was ironic about that is I said I gotta have something, and they didn't have anything, but they did have the small John Deere log loader.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to run that for 2 weeks and
Oh yeah.
try to keep up. That was kind of funny, but yeah. So there again, it was the same thing with the 658s. We run it for maybe a month, 2 months. Advertised for Caterpillar about those things because that's when they had the regen system put on them and stuff, and everybody was afraid that regen was going to knock the power out of them. But there was a lot of things being said about it, and which was not true at all. So we did a commercial that stated otherwise, and all is good. But yeah, there again, they sent 6 guys out, and we went over that machine and made some changes. And this is 6 years ago, 7 years ago, something like that. But I said we got to put the weight in the back. We need to put the weight in the back. Fuel tank is what I was talking about. But because they had everything off to the side. But,
Okay.
anyway.
So now, how long have those 658s been out?
Ours was in 2012.
Okay.
I believe, yeah.
And then, do you see in the future you guys are going to stick with doing the ground base like you have been, and then just supplementing now and again with tower as needed?
Yeah. I think Robbie, I'm getting up there in age a little bit. I think Robbie would enjoy that. We're trying to get it set up so that we got the right people that can do everything.
Mm-hmm.
We got a really good crew. Always have good people, and people have been with us for. I just retired our secretary of 35 years.
Wow.
Our fellow buncher operator, he retired too. He was 33 years, something like that. Ralph, if you see this, don't be mad at me because I can't remember how many years it was, but but it was something to that effect. But we've got really good people, and you can't run an operation as long as we have and not have good people. And there's and everybody says, oh, the woods is dying, and guess what? They said that 30 years ago. That yeah, you better do something different. Well, no, the timber industry's been very good to us over the years. There's not one time the people we work for did not pay us. They always sent a check every 2 weeks or every week, and right on time. And one thing about the timber industry is they got really good people. They got good people, and I'm proud to be one of them, after all these years. But yeah, that being said, let's see, what else was I going to say about that?
I was going to ask you, with the job market these days, there aren't too many young people that are getting into working out in the woods, and whether it's because it's not widely advertised or publicized or what have you. What kind of advice would you have to a young person that would want to get into working out in the woods?
I think I think a lot of people would be surprised that I don't believe in that. I think there's a lot of people out there, and we just hired a kid here the other day, and he's been wanting to be out in the woods for a long time. Young kid, he's only 24, I think, but they're out there, but nobody gives them a chance. And there's a lot of kids that do not like to be in an office or in any structured environment like that. They want to be outside, doing something outside with their hands, uh, and you just got to kind of throw the word out, and it's who you know, and pretty soon here comes somebody or the phone's ringing that yeah we would like. I had a guy call today. Yeah, he was 24 years old too. He says he says I want to start my own timber business as Falls Fallen. I says okay, and I knew the guy because I think he worked for me years ago. But I says, what if I had uh, a piece of timber that and it needed cable logging? I says, you know how to cable log? I says, you go ahead and you follow the whole thing, and then when you get done, you and your buddy can do the rigging, and we'll log it with the yarder, and you help out on that. Oh, he was all up for that. They just want to be outside, and they some of them just love it. And I still to this day believe that you just got to get out there and find them. And there's a lot of good outfits around here. They find people, you know, and so it's a good workplace with good people, you know, and it's not for the lazy guy though. You haven't got time to be lazy in this business. You gotta stay after it every day. Hardest part of the day is getting out of the pickup in the morning. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have trouble doing that. But the environment's changing. You know, we've got beautiful machines now, air conditioning and heaters and all above, and they're pretty trouble-free machines for the most part. You know, if they're taken care of properly. So it is a good workplace. We always try to keep full health insurance and retirement and 401s and all this stuff. You have to offer that, you know. Yeah, we can't be competitive with the Boeings or the Amazons or any of those people. We can't compete with that. But if that person likes being outside and being somewhat independent, which for the most part you are, then they love that stuff. Yeah, just like I do. Yeah,
Too cool. Well, Les, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me.
you betcha.